We are now within 30 seconds. You can see the countdown there in the blue box. And again, at some point, they're going to start their move toward the start line. And it's just a matter of timing it to perfection and deciding, okay, when can I really get after it here? And let's see what happens. A good start there, look by Team Drogba. Let's see if everybody's fairly even here. Way to the inside. That was a big, big jump there. Good launch by Brazil.
That's perfectly timed.
Yes.
That is perfectly timed.
Absolutely superb. But the question is, if you boosted, did you go too soon? It looks like that may be happening as Hagen's starting to lose some pace and get swamped by Eric Stark. That is the blue and dark blue craft. And then on the outside here is Team Drogba. And they really nailed it there with Yusuf Abdul-Razak.
That's a big move there, and they would have seen the previous two semi-finals and how important it was getting ahead at this point on the first lap, and that is everything. That might have been the move that could go and win this semi-final.
Yep, and we saw Team Brazil there up on the boost, but look at this. This is about as foil to foil as it gets, sweeping around those smart marks. And now the long, long run as they head back toward the harbor area. Two different lanes, but both of them really carrying a lot of speed. And Abdul-Razak has been able to stick right with him here and is sitting back in that position as well. This is great stuff, so close.
This is really strong, and the sort of performance you'd expect. I was about to say from the championship leaders of Team Miami, using that boost now to try and get that lead back, but also being counteracted by the boost used by Team Drogba. This is going to go neck to neck.
It really is, and Stefan Hagen is not that far back. He's losing a little bit of ground here, and now Abdul-Razak able to ease away just a little bit. Really, really quick second sector. That's why he's got that margin now over Eric Stark. But one thing we've seen with Eric is oftentimes his first couple of laps in these races, he's just sort of plodding, and then he comes alive. But the concern here is you don't want to lose too much time, and he's already adrift by about 5 seconds.
And now we look at, now we're into the second lap. The use of the long lap is now open to anyone, and this is going to be a very key part of the strategy of this semi-final, because they are much closer together as a three than we've seen so far in any semi-finals today. So when do you use it now if you're Team Drogba and maybe sacrifice the position but have that clean water to do it, or do you keep going, try and have the confidence you can build a gap and do it later? But one thing is for sure, it's much closer in this semi-final.
It is, and remember we had done a little bit of extrapolating, and it's about 13, let's call it 13 to 15 seconds for that long lap. And right away, and I think this is a good move, Stefan Hagen for Team Brazil decides, let's get that done and get me a little bit of space. I'll be in much smoother water, and again, maybe able to build up some time. Up front, Abdul-Razak continues to lead. He too has opened it up to about 9 seconds as we're about halfway through the second lap. And this is what we've seen in the first two. By the end of the second lap, margins of over 10 seconds. That's pretty substantial.
There was about a 17-second gap between first and third then when Team Brazil went into the long lap. So a little bit more than what we saw from Sarah Price with that 13 seconds use of the long lap. But making up that time, making up 4 or 5 seconds is very possible using the boost and having that perfect entry and exit to keep the race bird stable, balanced, and really maximize the power. And that's where the setup comes into it. So yes, they might have the strategy, but have they got the setup and the prop choice to maximize their performances here? You
saw the Team Brazil crew looking at the data, looking at the computers, watching what's going on, and Drogba really doing a nice job. A 1:33.1, best lap of the race by Yusuf Abdul-Razak here, and we go back and just watch the performance here of Team Brazil, struggling a little bit for Stefan Hagen, just cannot really get that thing dialed up a little bit. And now Abdul-Razak, his margin over second place is about 15 seconds, and so he's pretty close. You don't want to do it yet, because at 15 seconds you come out and you might have a lead, but you might, any little issue, you could get stuck behind somebody and then you're in the wake. You want to have a little bit more built up if you possibly can. And let's be honest, these are racers, and racers are greedy.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't be misguided by the distance it looks like on the course right now from the cameras, because as you said, Greg, there, when they use that long lap, that will change things. The Drogba team have got to try and build that gap to the point where they have a comfortable lead. They can come back out in front. Now they've been the only team that haven't used a long lap, and this is really a crucial lap. How much time can they build using their boosts effectively, trying to keep the race bird as balanced as possible?
And I found it interesting, you know, we're seeing some really good speeds here. 33.1 by Youssef, really, really fast. Fastest qualifying lap was a 34. And Sarah's observation about that big cruise ship sitting there might be deflecting some of these waves from these yachts and just changing it up a little bit. And there you see, that's Marcelo Claret and his daughter Sienna. They co-own this team, and really interested in what's going on here. Right now, Stefan Hagen just cannot get that boat, that Racebird, to do what he wants it to do, and continues to just lose a little bit of time. And again, in his defense, he has not had a season of racing in this either. So
yeah, the biggest learning curve for him, and of course his wife as well, standing in Team Checo Perez. But yeah, it's a lot to do when you've got another, you know, whole grid of teams that have been, you know, with 3 races of experience to then just turn up in a semi-final and hope to be competitive.
Well, and I think the thing to point out is the one thing that, you know, probably the biggest adjustments for Stefan and Yeva is the fact that when you're on the boost and you're just flat chat, when you get to that high end of the speed on the boost, it gets really unstable on the foil. And I've been noticing that all of a sudden his boat starts to, you know, drop and do things, and I look and he's just ending his boost run. And so I think, you know, maybe a little bit different approach to the boost, like we've talked about, coming out of the turns, use it to get that launch, not necessarily in an outright flat-out run.
Sure. I mean, look at that. That is a world-class backdrop, and that just says everything you need to know. That. Yeah. Unreal, unreal. And so this potentially could be the lap that Team Drogba go to use their long lap.
Yep.
They haven't done it yet. And like you said there, Greg, the use of the boost is so important because it can easily be a disadvantage if you use it in the wrong place or you activate it at the wrong time and you're not quite stable enough to really make the most of that power. This is a good example of when to use it. You know, you're straight, you're flat, you're in clean water, use all that speed, and I would be fairly sure they might go for a long lap here.
I would think, you know, it's this or on the, well, you kind of have to because they've now completed 4 laps, so they've got to do it on this one, or they would end up with a disqualification, and they're on top of that for sure. His margin over second is 30 seconds, so he's got tons of time to be able to get around on that long lap, and there you can see as he begins that long lap where the other competitors are. Again, Eric Stark for Team Miami has the fastest first sector of anybody, but just coming a bit too late. Plus, he has done that long lap already, as you pointed out. So it's all going to be a matter of where does Youssef Al Abdulrazak come out of the merge, and he's going to have plenty of a gap, good clean water, and be able to just keep it humming here. And once again, we're seeing, look at the balance on that. It just comes up and he just stays up very level, and even when it does drop a little bit, it's still an incredibly smooth run. He's just doing a superb job.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at Team Brazil, you know, there's about 11 seconds off the pace there, off the lap pace. So there's some lessons to be learned for the next semi-final for sure. And maybe trying to tap into whatever strategy or setup's been used by the other teams to maximize that balance and use of power and everything. And maybe it's about also just understanding the conditions around you, like Sarah was saying, with that blocking of with the big cruise ship blocking any water coming in from passing racecraft or leisure craft. It's gone a long way.
Well, you know, there's so much to be thinking about here, and watching as he comes through the line, boy, what an impressive run for Youssef Al Abdulrazak. Just an incredible run. We'll see exactly what the victory margin is going to be. He came out of the merge and still had almost 20 seconds in hand, so a fabulous run as now it is Eric Stark coming through and taking the checkers in that second spot. And there you can see that is his co-pilot right there, Anna Glennon, and I'm sure she's a little bit nonplussed at this point, just seeing the margin that was put up here.
That win has gone a long way. You know, the points accrued for that win. You know, they're currently 7 points behind the top 3 and only 1 point ahead of the 2 behind. So that's given them a bit of a window now going into this next semi-final, hopefully to push and actually continue those points towards the end of the day when the points matter, and be in a better place in the championship standings.